Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We have a wonderful webinar presentation for you, and we're sure you're going to love it. If you're interested in forming a new credit union, you're in the right place. My name is Catherine Baxter, and I'm going to be your moderator for our Federal Credit Union Charter Application Guide update today. And we know you're going to enjoy it. But before we get started, we have a few administrative announcements for you. If you're having any problem hearing me, adjust the volume all the way up so that you can hear this. Send us a comment in the Q&A if you need administrative assistance with that. From this website, please allow pop-ups. And also throughout the webinar, we'd like you to ask questions because we're going to do a Q&A at the end, but we don't want you to wait until the end. We'd like you to ask questions throughout. And in approximately 1 week, a closed caption version of this webinar is going to be available in our learning management system. And now we have to do our NCUA disclaimer, and it says, the materials presented in this webinar are intended as an informative and educational summary of general information on federal credit union charter applications. The NCUA has taken reasonable measures to ensure the quality of the data and other information provided by the NCUA that is available in this presentation. The NCUA, however, makes no warranty, express or implied, nor assumes any legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, correctness, or completeness of any information that is available through this presentation, nor represents that its use would not infringe on privately owned rights. The slides are intended for educational and discussion purposes and do not constitute legal advice, nor replace independent professional judgment. Reference to any specific commercial product, process, or service by trade name, trademark, manufacturer, or otherwise does not constitute an endorsement, recommendation, or favoring by the U.S. government or the NCUA. So now, what I'd like to do is introduce our Director of the Office of Credit Union Resources and Expansion, Martha Ninachuk, and she's going to give us opening remarks. Martha, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you for attending today's webinar. This webinar is part of the NCUA's Access Initiative, advancing communities through credit, education, stability, and support. And what better way of providing access by chartering new credit unions? Credit unions take such an active role in providing financial services and support for their members. As a part of Access, a new charter working group was formed to take a look at our chartering process and to determine how we could gain efficiencies, streamline processes, and provide additional transparency to the organizing groups as they move through the chartering process. We are proud to present the new charter application guide, which is a result of the new charter working group's efforts and will be presented during the webinar today. Christelle Orisady and Susan Graham, NCUA staff and members of the Access Work Group, are very passionate about the work they do in assisting the chartering of new credit unions. I am sure you'll gain a lot of good information from them during today's webinar. And again, please submit questions as you think of them for our Q&A at the end of the presentation. At this time, I'll turn the virtual podium back to Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. I also wanted to mention to our audience at the end of the presentation, we'll allow you to upload or download the slides, and we'll do that when we get to the Q&A. So don't go anywhere. Please stay with us and you'll be able to do that. And now I'm going to introduce our speakers. And as Martha's already mentioned, we have Susan Graham. She's a consumer access coordinator in our office, and also Christelle Orisady, who's also a consumer access coordinator in the Office of Credit Union Resources and Expansion. So without further ado, I'll turn the podium over to Sue and Christelle. Ladies, you have our attention.
Thanks, Catherine. Hello, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. Today, Christelle and I are here to talk about the revisions to the Federal Credit Union Charter Application Guide. We'll refer to it as the guide. And we will walk through the new streamlined process that you will use to apply for a new federal credit union charter. The guide provides instructions for completing each of the 3 phases of the chartering process. They are Phase 1, the proof of concept, or POC, Phase 2, the charter application itself, and this will include the business plan and pro forma financial projections that detail how the credit union will operate and will demonstrate that it will be a viable credit union into the future. And then Phase 3, the final documents and approval activities that we need before we can issue a new charter. We will discuss the required NCUA chartering and insurance forms and the meeting that we will have with the credit union officials, during which we will review and sign a letter of understanding and agreement, or LUA, that is between the credit union officials and NCUA that covers the first few years of operations. Next slide.
So what changed and why? This guide was updated from a previous version to include the new 3-phase approach, an update to the proof of concept online submission process, and new or updated tools that are now available online for your use. All in all, so all in one place on the CURE New Charter webpage. You can find that at www.ncua.gov, then selecting Support Services in the blue ribbon at the top of the page, and then selecting Credit Union Resource and Expansion. The guide gives detailed instructions on using our streamlined chartering process, which will save you time preparing the application package. Following the guide will help maximize your time and allow you to efficiently complete the information NCUA needs to be able to get you to a chartering decision. As we mentioned, our process is now separated into 3 distinct phases. Each of the 3 phases ends in your submission of the requested documentation and information in that phase that is detailed in the guide. The proof of concept, or POC as we'll be referring to it, activities are now included in Phase 1, along with the information NCUA will need in order to provide you a preliminary field of membership, or FOM as we'll refer to it as, approval, and our reservation of your requested name, providing it is not in use by another credit union and meets the other requirements we discussed in Phase 1 of the guide. So why are we doing this? Well, we updated the guide to clearly identify what you will need to submit for each of the 3 phases to streamline the process. You will complete Phase 1 before you submit Phase 2. We will provide a letter at the end of each phase indicating what your next action will be. So this saves you time and creates efficiencies that shorten our processing time. You will find tools and samples on the NCUA website to help you complete the application requirements successfully. For example, a sample membership survey that we have updated is also online, so you can find objects such as that. Next slide, please.
So this is what the new process looks like for chartering. In Phase 1, applicants will submit a proof of concept, and CURE will review that submission and share the results of the review with you. This phase will allow you to demonstrate the following. 1, that you have a well thought out plan for chartering a new credit union, and 2, that the field of membership qualifies under NCUA regulations. You will provide the required details and documents needed for NCUA to give preliminary approval of your proposed field of membership, and there are different requirements for each of the 3 types, community, single, or multiple common bond, that we'll talk about in a few minutes. And also, if you're seeking a low income designation for a single or multiple common bond field of membership, there's some additional information you will also provide. This is all detailed in the guide. Once that is successfully completed, we will provide you preliminary approval of your proposed field of membership, along with reserving your credit union name, and we will identify whether the potential members in total qualify for a low-income designation and notify you to proceed to Phase 2. In Phase 2, you will develop and submit the charter application, and that'll include items such as the member survey, the business plan, and pro forma financial projections. Here we'll review your application to determine if it's a viable plan. When the plan does demonstrate viability, you will move to Phase 3, and that's where you submit the final forms and documentation. During this phase, background and credit checks for all officials and senior management will be finalized. And after successfully completing all 3 phases, NCUA will issue the new charter. Next slide.
All right, so what does phase 1 look like? So the proof of concept. During this phase, you will conduct research about charting a federal credit union. This will include, among other things, Part 701, Organization and Operation of Federal Credit Unions. You can use also as a resource Appendix B to Part 701 of the NCUA's regulations. This is also known as the Chartering and Field of Membership Manual, which is a very, very handy resource. It will include the NCUA's Learning Management System Services, or LMS. Materials are there also for education. And last, Low Income Designation, or LID as we refer to it sometimes as, Minority Deposit Institution Designation, and Community Development Financial Institution Certification. You will summarize what your purpose will be within the POC, state what field of membership you want to serve, and describe your plan for obtaining donated capital, including how much money you estimate you might need. This is all preliminary at this stage. Your concept for the credit union's business model and capital needs. Don't worry, we'll talk about capital amounts in more detail in a few slides. So if your field of membership is a community FOM, for example, we will determine whether the credit union qualifies for a low-income credit union designation based on the potential membership as a whole. If it does not, you will be able to apply for a LID at any point after the charter is issued, but based on actual members, not the entire potential member population. We can also make this preliminary determination for you if your field of membership is a single or multiple common bond, if you can provide addresses and certain other information for every member of each associational or occupational group in your single common bond or multiple common bond field of membership. This is more commonly done after the charter is issued, but it's based on your actual members' addresses. CURE can perform the LID analysis for you anytime after you begin opening accounts. During phase 1, we will also reserve your preferred credit union name if it is available, or we'll work with you to ensure you come up with a name that meets our regulation. Generally, if the exact name isn't already in use, wouldn't be confused with another credit union or government agency, and ends with Federal Credit Union, it can be approved. Next slide.
We wanted to talk about field of membership. There are 3 permissible field of membership types according to our regulation, and I would refer you to NCUA's Chartering and Field of Membership Manual, as Christelle noted earlier, which is Appendix B to Part 701, and also our new guide lists exactly what you need to provide for each type of membership. The 3 permissible field of membership types are: 1, a community. This is a well-defined local community, neighborhood, or rural district, and this would include anyone who lives, works, worships, or goes to school in that community. A community charter can be a single political jurisdiction, for example, a city or a county, and this includes or a portion thereof. It can also be a statistical area, such as a metropolitan statistical area, an MSA, or a combined statistical area, a CSA, as designated by the Office of Management and Budget. In all cases, the area has to be contiguous. The second type is a single common bond group, and that can be either occupational or associational. For example, Microsoft employees would be an occupational group. Another example, members of a church would be an associational group. Also, a trade, industry, or profession common bond, also known as a TIP, such as healthcare workers in Maricopa County, Arizona, would fall under this single common bond category. And then the third type is a multiple common bond, and that is basically the same thing as a single common bond, except that there is more than one occupational and or associational group as part of the full field of membership. Each group stands alone with regard to common bond. An FOM cannot mix a community with occupational or associational groups. Community is geographically based, while a single or multiple common bond does not have to be contiguous, and it is not limited to a geographic area. For example, all members of an associational group do not have to live in one state. Each group type also includes others who can automatically join the field with that field of membership. For example, for a community with a low income designation, you would also get people who participate in programs to relieve poverty or distress in that community. As another example, for occupational groups, you would get retirees of the occupational group. And as another example, for associational groups, it would include employees of the association as well as the members. For all types, employees of the credit union itself and members of the immediate household are included. Next slide.
So phase one, just to wrap this up and to discuss some of the highlights. Once these activities are completed, you will submit the proof of concept, preferably online, and this starts the chartering process. Our proof of concept is available online and is an easy way to ensure you have provided all the information we need. The link is available at the bottom of the slide. We will review your proof of concept, and upon determining you have a well thought out plan and a field of membership that meets our regulatory requirements, we will invite you to proceed to phase two, issue a preliminary field of membership approval and a low income designation if applicable. And we will also reserve your credit union name. Next slide, please.
And now we will have our first polling question. The question will be showing on your screen, and if you could please answer it, it's helpful information for us. The question is, what field of membership do you anticipate choosing for your new charter? And possible answers are single common bond, and this would include TIP, multiple common bond, or community. So if you could make that choice for us, we would appreciate having that information. Again, it's a single common bond, a multiple common bond, or a community type of field of membership.
Which one do you think will have the most, Sue? A, B, or C?
I don't know. We've been getting a lot of each of the three, including tips. So I'll be curious to know what the answer is.
That was a waffly answer, but I'll guess. I'm going to say B.
If I have to say, I would say C.
Okay.
So please submit your answer. And we'll share the results when they come in. Interesting. So 32 of you did not answer the question. Maybe we'll get a higher number next question. But it's pretty even. We had 17 answers, say single common bond, 15 multiple, and 15 community. So kind of similar to what we've been experiencing in applications. Great, thank you. Next slide.
All right, so these are just some frequently asked questions that we see that arise around this particular portion in phase one. So the first question is, where can I find chartering resources? Well, first, start with NCOA.gov. You can find a lot of information on CURE's new charter resource page that provides links to applicable laws and regulations, templates, and other tools. Search for a website for your local credit union league, trade association for credit unions. And last, search for other trade associations. It's also worth a Google, and you'll find CUNA, NAFCU, and others that you might find helpful as you go through the chartering process. Next question is, how is a credit union different than a bank? Well, a bank is a for-profit company that is privately owned or that has investors, stockholders, that typically receive a monetary benefit from their investment. A credit union is a not-for-profit cooperative that is owned by the membership, who elect the board of directors, who have a fiduciary duty to the credit union. One member, one vote. Because of the cooperative structure, federal credit unions are not taxed. This means that profits from the operations of a credit union become the credit union's capital, which allows a credit union to provide benefits to the membership. So for example, higher dividend rates on deposits, lower rates on loans, and or more services or products for free or at a lower cost. The next question we normally see is, do I need to work with the state too? Well, as a federal credit union, NCOA is your regulator and your insurer. You will only need to file whatever documentation is required to do business in the state or states you'll be doing business in. Each state has different requirements and regulations, So you'll want to look to state law for those requirements or have an attorney or other knowledgeable person assist you in determining what the state requirements are for licensing. The next question we normally see is, how long does it take to get a charter? Well, it depends. We strive to have phase 1 completed in 60 days from receipt of the materials you submit. Our target completion for phase 2 and 3 combined is 180 days from receipt of a substantially complete application submitted in phase 2 to the issuance of the charter at the end of phase 3. A substantially complete application is one that has all required elements and documentation and that doesn't require major revisions. An example of an application that would not be considered complete is one with missing required forms or one that has a pro forma financial statement that doesn't balance and needs to be resubmitted. The amount of time you take between phases to complete the submission materials is at your own pace. We have charter credit unions in less than a year, and some have taken much longer because some applicants take much more time to prepare their documents between the phases, and this is okay. Go at what pace works for you. Your responsiveness greatly drives the total time start to finish. Another question is, what is a subscriber's role? What about an organizer? You need at least 7 subscribers by regulation. This is the group of individuals who will assist in creating the charter application, including the formation of the business plan and pro forma financial projections. They will agree to be a subscriber and become a credit union member and deposit at least 1 share, and that's the amount determined by the bylaws that they will create in the credit union. Think of them as the founding members. Their final responsibility is to appoint the board of directors upon receipt of a charter until the first annual meeting of the membership, when board members will be elected through a membership vote. Another question we get is, how much capital do I need? Another $1 million question, but it's also another it depends answer. The amount of necessary startup and capital funding will depend on the actual startup cost, operating expenses, and asset size, among other things, identified in the business plan and pro forma financial projections. These figures will be different for every potential credit union. When you're estimating how much funding you may need, consider using $500,000 at a minimum or $100,000 per $1 million if projected assets are greater than $5 million. During the first 5 years of your proposed credit union's operation, the NCUA will evaluate the adequacy of your projected capital amount during the review of the business plan and financial projections you submit in phase 2. Funding is usually in the form of cash or in-kind donations is necessary to cover the following items that we normally see. That includes startup cost, net operating losses until the credit union achieves positive net earnings, and the amount needed to achieve and maintain appropriate capital position. The amount of funding necessary will again vary depending on factors including the initial services you plan to offer, the costs related to providing services, the anticipated level of risk in the business model, and the proposed operating structure. So several factors. Generally, a charter will not be approved if projected net worth is less than 6%. Now that's the statutory definition of adequately capitalized and something we use as just a rule of thumb. However, there could be exceptions. For example, a business model with an extremely low risk profile or one that has contingent commitments for subordinated debt after chartering. Next slide, please.
So that is what happens in phase 1. In phase 2, you will actually submit the charter application. And this is a list of the phase 2 activities you will perform at this point. As we mentioned before, you'll get all the way through phase 1. You'll get a letter from us saying, it's good, we're ready to move to phase 2, and then this is where the charter application begins. We're not going to read through the whole list, but in this webinar, we will highlight those activities that we get the most questions about. And if you have additional questions, as we said earlier, please put them in the Q&A chat, and we'll try to get to them before the end of the presentation. Next slide.
So in phase 2, which we call our pre-planning, some of the items we wanted to highlight are the survey. So the member survey is a very important part. This needs to be a random statistical sampling method that's detailed in the guide if you need more information. The purpose of the survey is to get data on what products and services your membership wants, what kinds of deposit accounts and balances they expect to have, and what kinds of loans and balances they think they might need, and other data you might want to ask. You can then use this information to decide what products and services the credit union should offer, and it will provide data you can use to develop good assumptions for your pro forma financial statements. We provide a sample survey and a sample of how to analyze survey results on the CURE website at ncua.gov. Market conditions. So you'll research and describe market conditions specific to your field of membership. So for example, for a community, you might want to provide details about the community's makeup by age, by income, and unemployment rates. You may want to provide information about the local economy that it will support, and all this will to support your assumptions later in the business planning process. Donated capital. At this stage, your donated capital commitments will need to be supported by commitment letters and bank statements or other documents showing a donor can meet the commitments to donate capital funds. We strongly encourage you to find a mentor credit union and possibly others, such as the vendors or league, to help you navigate through the chartering process. Credit unions can be a great source of information as well related to vendors and how the credit union's operations work. Some will also commit their senior management's time to help you during your startup phase or help you complete your first call report or numerous other activities as well. Leagues often will provide you with sample policies or access to the members only portion of their website. Next slide, please.
And now we have our second audience polling question. The question is, where do you plan to obtain your capital donations from? The possible answers are sponsoring entity, multiple smaller donations from potential members, organizers, or other. Please, if we can get everyone to answer that question, that would be great for our presentation to get an idea of this issue. Capital donations are often the hardest thing for you to obtain. So we just want to get a sense of what your thinking is as to how you're going to approach that.
Sue, what do we mean by sponsoring entity?
Good question. A sponsoring entity can be any entity that's willing to give you money. What we're really looking for there is, if you're doing a community charter, it might be several businesses in a community. If you're doing a single common bond, it might be the company that is going to be the source of the common bond, so the employer group. It can be anything that's not the multiple smaller donations from individuals is what we're really looking for there.
Yeah, we've seen examples of multiple smaller donations where people have pulled their resources to come together for the cause they believed in to help start a credit union. So we've seen various avenues for being able to pull together funding.
And we've seen multiple. So sometimes a sponsoring entity will give a little bit of money and the rest will come from individuals who believe in the cause of the credit union and want to help get it started. So it can be any of these things. You can get capital from any source. Okay, our polling results are in, and the answers are 20% or 24% are from a sponsoring entity. About 12 answers said multiple donations from smaller amounts. 6 said the organizers, and 8 said others. So you can get it from any source. It looks pretty evenly spread as to where that money might come from. We've worked with a lot of groups that have gotten pretty creative in trying to figure out who they might be able to obtain money from. So great answers. Next slide.
So some of the activities that you'll be doing in phase 2. So in this section, you will tell us what products and services you plan to offer and when you will implement each product and services. Your marketing plan will describe the marketing efforts you will make to ensure that you are able to meet your goals for new members, products, services, and other elements defined in the business plan. The plan will include costs for marketing and specific itemized marketing actions detailed for each quarter. Another thing is management is really a key component of the credit union success or failures. You and we as NCUA will want to evaluate the board and management as a whole and determine if there are major areas that aren't represented by an official or management staff that need to be mitigated. So for example, if there is no financial institution compliance expertise, you may need to outsource that function until it can be managed in-house. If there is no data processing expertise, as another example, you may want to consider an online data processing system that provides a greater deal of operational processing to support to start. Your credit union location. If you're planning on an online-only operation, you will need to explain how you're going to be able to offer appropriate customer service, how problems will be handled, and specifics of how this unique business model will be compatible with your operation. We will look closely at vendor due diligence, the policies you establish that address this, and whether you can serve your members under this environment. Next slide, please.
And as you're building your business plan, another thing that you will do is to develop the pro forma financial projections, and they go hand in hand. The business plan has the plans, the pro forma has the numbers that result from the plan. In general, you will need to provide projections to the point at which you become profitable. Typically, we see at least 3, but sometimes as many as 5 or more years worth of projections before positive earnings are seen. And what we're really wanting to see is that your positive earnings are from standing alone, not from the capital. You'll have capital donations up front, but we want to see you be able to show how you're going to get to a point where you're going to make a profit and therefore be viable into the future. We will check that major expenses are included in the pro formas. We will do that by reviewing draft contracts and bids from your major vendors, such as your data processing vendor. And we'll also look at any lease agreement terms that you have if you do have a lease that you're going to be paying over that period of time. And the assumptions should tie back to the results of your survey analysis. This is really important, and this is how you can support the numbers that you have in your pro forma financials. It's a great way to do it by looking at what your potential members have said. For example, if the member survey showed an overwhelming desire for new auto loans and you decide to offer this product, you'll already have data to support your assumption that you will offer new auto loans, since you know how many and what loan types your potential members say that they want. What we're looking for here is reasonable supported assumptions. The next area will be bylaws. You will have to have bylaws, and those are identical to the standard bylaws in our regulation. You can find that online as well. And those provide commentary on what items you can and what items you cannot alter. For example, you will need to fill in the blanks for things like the number of board members you want to have or par value of shares. You'll get to choose that. There are certain other bylaw provisions where you will choose from among multiple options that are in the standard bylaws. For example, deciding on whether you want to have a credit committee or not. Other areas where it doesn't give you an option or a fill in the blank need to be word for word what is in our regulation in order to get approved. And then finally, operating policies. The best thing I can tell you here is don't reinvent the wheel. You can get samples either from your state's league, the Credit Union League, which is trade association for credit unions. Each state has at least one that credit unions can belong to, or you can get them from a mentor credit union. Just make sure that you don't get them from a credit union that hasn't updated their policies to reflect current practices and regulatory requirements. We have seen that. We'll just have to go back and update them and create a little extra time there on your side. It's probably better to seek policies from a federal credit union rather than a state chartered credit union, only because some of their regulations might be different than on the federal side. And those are the phase 2 activities. Next slide.
All right, we have our final polling question, and that is, which additional resources might you turn to for assistance? And what we have down here that we see regularly is A, the local credit union league, B, CUNA, C, a consultant, D, vendors, or E, none. I know what I'm doing and I got this under control. So just to repeat, which additional resources might you turn to for assistance? Local credit union league, B, CUNA, C, consultant, or D, vendors, or last, none, E.
And just know there can be other resources than what's listed on this this question here. These are just some samples.
One I can think of is just even working with the credit union, a larger credit union, that's someone who can be a good resource as well. All right. Got a few answers, and not surprising, the largest we see looks like 14 people said a consultant. Next, CUNA, or sorry, no, local credit union league. So 11 there, next by CUNA. So not surprising. Those are also all really good resources. One, the vendor, and the rest are gonna use our new manual, which is super helpful. Excellent. Next slide.
And now we're to the phase 2 frequently asked questions. The first question that we get quite a bit is, what return or benefit can a donor receive? There is no return on donated capital. It is strictly a donation. It benefits the credit union, becomes capital, and therefore it benefits the credit union and the entire membership, not the individual who donated the funds. And that's how the cooperative structure is set up. Everyone shares the benefits of the credit union. However, if the proposed credit union has a nonprofit, for example, a church, that could receive donations on the credit union's behalf for capital donations, and they collect them, and at the end of the collection period, they write a check to the credit union upon chartering, a donor may be able to receive a tax benefit for their donation if it's structured that way. But here's our disclaimer: we are not tax accountants or the authority on tax deductions. So if you're going to go that route and have questions, seek professional advice on this subject if needed. About half of the credit unions that I see do it that way through a nonprofit if they're associated with one. This adds an extra potential benefit to the donor. The second question, can we use grant funds as capital? This one's tricky. Unfortunately, grant funds, unless they're privately funded, are typically only available after a credit union is chartered, and in some cases, after other requirements are met. For example, CDFI grants available through the Treasury are awesome, and they're only available, however, to a chartered credit union that goes through the certification process to become a certified CDFI. Often, other requirements, such as a low income designation, are also required for these funds. And grant funds can be used directly as capital of a chartered credit union. Again, it's after chartering, not before, if there are no restrictions on the use of those funds. So if you have additional questions on how that would work, an accountant could help you guide you through the accounting for grant funds, as the proper accounting treatment is going to be fact specific. It is good, however, to identify your intention to obtain grants in your business plan that you turn in to us, but because it has not yet been granted or approved, you would not include it in your pro forma financial projections. The third question, will CURE assist in writing our business plan? Unfortunately, CURE cannot assist in writing your business plan since we would have a conflict of interest because we're the ones evaluating it and making a decision on it. However, we can point you to numerous resources that will help you to develop your plan. And we can also answer questions about the process, the regulations, and the other things that you might have questions about as needed. If we can't help you with a particular item directly, we might be able to help you find a source that can. We'll often brainstorm with you and give you ideas of how you can solve a problem as you're going through this process and get questions answered if we can't help you directly. Question 4, do you have sample business plans? We don't currently post a sample business plan, and that's primarily because each business model is so unique and so customized. However, if you follow the steps sequentially as identified in the guide, that will be the most efficient way to put your plan together. And it's also how we review it, and so it will shorten the length of our review time. And the next question, where do I find a good mentor credit union? And I believe that's one of the questions that got asked from the audience. You can search for credit unions at ncua.gov by clicking on the Research a Credit Union link. It's on the front page of our ncua.gov website. you can search by all kinds of different things, by the credit union type, by the location, by the field of membership type, and a lot of other criteria. And when you narrow it down, you can then get those names and look at the individual financials of those credit unions that you choose to look at. This is also available on our website at fpr.ncua.gov. Or you can look at a group of credit unions by selecting criteria, including geography or asset size. And we do aggregate data by peer groups in 6 asset size categories. And I would tell you that most new credit unions that pull that data, it just gives you an idea for comparison. And most will start in the less than 2 million category, or the second category, which is 2 to 10 million in assets. Also, your state's league might be able to assist you with finding a good mentor. And finally, the last question, what industry resources are available? I have to tell you, credit unions are generous. They're generally very willing to help mentor a startup credit union. That would be a great source for information, and sometimes other help as well. Also, the league is a good source. Many leagues offer support and services to startups, and that can be a variety of things: access to the website, training, mentoring themselves. They're all different. You just need to make that phone call and see what they have to offer. And some vendors, particularly data processing vendors, have been known to provide reduced fees in the first few years of a credit union's operation. Other vendors provide resources to help with CDFI certification, and a quick internet search or phone call to another credit union operating in your state or the available credit union league will give you a good starting place to find industry resources. They're out there. You can find them. Next slide.
So phase 3, final NCUA approval. So in this phase, you will submit the required NCUA forms. You can click again, thank you. Once CURE intends to approve the charter, we send it to the region, and by region, NCUA has 3 particular regions, which is the Western, Southern, and Eastern region. So depending on where your credit union resides, you will transition eventually from CURE to one of the regions who will begin to supervise you, and we will give them 30 days to review and concur with our package that you've submitted. So after that, we will schedule an LUA signing, which we mentioned earlier, which is a letter of understanding and agreement, and we'll talk about that in a bit. We'll schedule a signing of that agreement meeting with your board of directors. Once that's done, we issue the charter and hand you off to the region you will be supervised from. So from there, the region will assign your examiner and your supervisory examiner, and that will begin to be your primary contact and a great resource as well he can start corresponding with. These are the people who will conduct your examination and be your source of contact to the region. Next slide, please.
So in phase 3, you will have some final forms that you will complete, and here's where it really starts to get real for both you and us. The NCUA 4008 needs to be filled out. That's the organization certificate. The 9500 and 9501 will get filled out at this time. That's the application and the insurance portion of it. And these are the forms that finalize the chartering process and become your official chartering record. I wanted to point out the Form 4012 separately. These are forms that we have you fill out for each official and senior management staff. We'll ask for them at this time. We don't want you to send them in before then. This will give us permission to perform the required background and credit checks for these individuals. And please don't send them in before we ask for them. We will ask you when we're ready to start processing them. And we say that because we don't want to have to redo a background or credit check because it becomes stale dated if it comes in too early, which would just extend the processing time. So we'll ask you for those forms when we're ready to start processing them. Next slide.
So issuing the LUA. So the letter of understanding and agreement, The purpose of that is to identify parameters that you need to operate within during the first few years. And that's such as limiting large loans to one borrower or soliciting or accepting broker deposits to reduce risk of some activities that generally carry some additional risk especially for a smaller credit union. Another thing is, we would like to get your agreement on certain things that you will do, such as maintaining adequate loan documentation for all loans and obtaining training for all officials and management staff. So the LUA is a signed agreement between the credit union board of directors and NCUA. Most provisions of the LUA allow you to go outside the agreed upon items if you obtain regional director's approval first. For example, you can ask the region to approve an individual loan that is outside the agreed upon amount. So the LUA is in place until removed by the region, but this is just typically the first 2 years of operations. Next slide, please.
When we get to the end of phase 3, one of the first questions that's asked is, when will I get my charter? Very frequently asked question. You will get that charter and the share insurance certificate a few days after the LUA is signed. So when you sign the LUA, you're done. A couple days later, we'll get our signatures on our side, and then we will issue the charter number, give it to you, and you're official at that point. The other questions that we get frequently are, what do we do after the charter is issued? Well, this is where your fun really starts. This is where you get busy and put everything in place so that you can open your doors. At this point, once you have that charter, you can contact the IRS and they will give you your EIN. You can then, with that, open an account at the Federal Reserve Bank. You can complete any registration that your state or local municipalities require for you to do business there. And depending on where you're at, that could be one license. It could be one for the state, one for the county, one for the city. It just depends. It'll be different for each location that you have and each state that you work in. You can finalize contracts with your vendors. I would recommend you start with your data processing vendor and your card processor or supplier if you're going to have debit or credit cards. These two we found usually take the most time to get set up. And then from there, you work through your plan and all of your products and services and make sure that you have everything ready to go. So this is also the plan where you plan the logistics for opening the credit union to members. That might include a build out on an office facility or other plans that you have. And then the final question is, when can we open our doors for business? So you can open your doors for business as soon as you're ready, totally on your schedule. There can be a 2 to 4 month lag or more to get on your data processing vendor's setup schedule. My experience has been that they don't want to put you into their schedule until they know you have the charter, because then it's final. Ordering debit or credit card stock has caused delays for others, so that might be another one that you want to make sure you have in the pipeline ahead of time, and so you can get that started as soon as you get your charter. And basically how soon you open will depend largely on when your building space and your vendor setup is completed. Next slide.
So congratulations. After all these steps and you've gone through phase 1, 2, and 3, you are a credit union. So this is something we're excited about, and we really think you'll enjoy our new guide. So I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Director of CURE, Jean Marie Kamiathi, and we will answer questions that came in during the presentation.
Thank you, Christelle, and good afternoon, everyone. So we've gotten quite a few questions. We've got about 10 minutes that we can use to answer them. We'll try to get to as many as we can. If we do not get to all of them, the answers will be posted as a frequently asked questions as part of the posting of the webinar on our learning management service. So our first question is, our group has been approved for our field of membership already, and we recently got a letter stating we're in phase 1 capital funding plan of the chartering process. Do we still need to define the credit union's purpose and core values, as well as describe our field of membership in our proof of concept submission? So in other words, we're in phase one. What needs to be included in the proof of concept? And I'll ask Christelle to answer that one for us.
Thanks, Jean Marie. So if you're in phase one and you're wondering what needs to go in there, I'll just reiterate that the 4 elements that we like to see in there is, yes, your purpose, and that just helps us understand a little bit more about your credit union. Sometimes people believe, sometimes maybe opening up a nonprofit is something that's more of what you're really wanting to do. And so we use that just as a discussion piece, but your purpose really helps guide. We also have your field of membership. That is a really important piece that we use to evaluate. So you'll submit that along with the documentation to support what field of membership that you want. Sometimes it's easy as just as the bylaws for like your association, but we do ask for you to submit that as well. We also ask you to let us know about your funding. You do not, again, need to send like a statement, a bank statement or anything like that, but let us know where you're going to get money from and how much you estimate. That really helps us to guide the conversation and to let you know if we see any hiccups. And last, we like to also see your subscribers, and we just like to know that you do have the 7 people that can help you to support your credit union.
Thank you, Christelle. So Sue, I've got a question for you now. If a private foundation has been formed by donations from companies or other entities, can a de novo group get a grant from them to support their capital?
Absolutely. Grant funding can come from any source. If a group has set up a new foundation to be able to distribute those funds, they're probably a 501c3, which means that they've either done fundraising and are keeping the funds there, then they'll turn around and write a check out to the credit union once it's formed, or they may have other sources of funding that they have. One common one is a CDFI. We have had groups go to a community development financial institution like a loan fund and get some funding from them. They're expert fundraisers and they get grants themselves. Their grant writers are on staff. They will help pull in money so that the credit union can have. So yes, you can get donations from any combination of entities or individuals, any sources at all. It can come from anywhere.
Thank you, Sue. And I'm hearing from Catherine that the slides have been made available through the file transfer. So for those of you in the audience who would like to, you can right click on the shared file in the screen to download the slides so you have them. Okay, Christelle, another question for you. If the proposed credit union is a multiple common bond and has groups that are in multiple states, so for instance, maybe there are some in Illinois and some in Indiana because of their proximity, how would the region be assigned to them, or how would the region be determined for them?
That's a great question. Normally, especially if it's contiguous, you'll probably likely be in the same region. And I say that because if it's 2 states that are just coincidentally in the same region, but if for some reason it's not, if they're in different regions, then we'll usually base that on where your corporate office is, kind of like your home office, and that will be the driving factor for that.
Okay, thank you. Another question, Sue, I'll send this one to you. Do we have sample policies and procedures available for organizing groups to use?
Good question. No, we don't provide those, but there are great resources where they're available to you. I know there are software or there are vendors that provide either template policies that you can fill in. There's several vendors that you can buy those from, and you might even be able to get them to cut you a deal or give it to you for free. Ask the question. You'd be surprised how many people will give you free things if you just ask for it. Another great source, as we mentioned earlier, is other credit unions, particularly other federal credit unions. And I say that only because a federal credit union's rules that they have in their policies are the same policies that you would have to follow as another federal credit union. Some of the state rules could be different. It's tricky. You could start with a state rule, but you would have to know if anything in there was state specific that would be different on the federal side. So it's just easier to go with a federal credit union. There are a lot of credit unions out there that are willing to share policies, procedures, and let you come in and look at their operations and see how all those policies are implemented. There's lots of credit unions. I would go one of those routes to get a sample policy.
Okay, thank you. Christelle, back to you on this one. I work with an organizing group and we have been told that we are in phase 2. We have not received the LID designation yet, so for low income designation yet. When can I obtain this?
Well, if you're in phase 2, that means you already have an approved field of membership. So you can just either come back and talk with your assigned coordinator and work with Cure on that, or you can get it after your chartering. But basically, you can come work with Cure, work with one of the coordinators to obtain that if it's possible for the type of field of membership you have initially.
Okay, thank you. So I'm still seeing some questions about downloading the slides and the file transfer. So if you close the file transfer window by accident, you can go to the File tab on the top left and click Transfer and find the slides for download that way. Back to some of our other questions. So I'm an organizing group that is a religious organization. Can you reconfirm the chartering process for my organization? So
That's
that
a great question.
that'd be a single common bond. Sue, if you'd like to take that one.
Yep, if it's one associational group, one church, that would be one associational group, it would be a single common bond. If there are more than one individual association, so for example, you have a local church and then you have another associational group that's tied to the church or a second church, that would be multiple common bonds. So it just depends on the structure of the organization or organizations, but it would be associational in nature. And I would strongly recommend, I don't think we've really stressed this enough, call us if you have any questions about field of membership. I've seen some other field of membership questions come up on the Q&A here as well. Call us and we can walk you through them, because often there's different ways it can be structured depending on who it is that you're really trying to capture in your field of membership. So, but to answer that specific church question, sounds to me like it would probably be either single or multiple common bonds, depending on if there's one organization involved or more than one.
Okay, thank you. Christelle, can the NCUA assist with finding a mentor credit union?
Unfortunately, we can't actually give you a mentor credit union, but we absolutely can help point you in the right direction or give you some guidance on where to find one if you're struggling with that. So we can definitely work with you on that, but we can't necessarily recommend specifics.
Okay, thank you. Sue, back to you. And this one's a little bit more in depth. So
Okay.
if you want to jump in on it, you're welcome to as well. So are there any limitations on the types of products and services a de novo credit union can offer in their first year?
That's a great question. And, you know, to answer that, it's really a fact-specific answer. There are no strict limitations of anything unless we put something in this letter of understanding and agreement that we will sign, or it's not permissible by regulation. So for example, we will, depending on what your business plan is, maybe take something that's a higher risk product or service, and we may end up putting something in the LUA that says during the first 2 years or until the LUA is lifted, you know, for example, we don't want you to go beyond X dollars in that product, or we don't want you to offer a highly risky service, or we might put some restrictions on how you operate within that product or service. So it's really fact specific. But in a general sense, if you have a good plan, you've got good capital, you have good policies and procedures, and it looks like something that's not going to put you into a high risk category, you know, it's definitely something we will talk to you about if we have any concerns about and work something out.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Unfortunately, we've reached the end of the time that we have available today. We do have more questions, and we will be sure to answer all of those in the FAQ that we post with the webinar. What I'd like to say is thank you to everyone for joining us today. We hope you found this webinar informational and informative. Please know that we're here to help you. You can contact Cure with questions before you begin this journey, as well as during the process. Every question is a good question, and we're happy to answer them and guide you through the chartering process. This will save you time and make it more efficient for all of us. Our general email address and phone number is listed on the slide now. Once you submit Phase 1 documents, a consumer access coordinator will be assigned to work with you through the entire chartering process. They will become your primary contact and your primary resource. And as always, we strive to answer your questions within 24 hours. So we hope that we've helped you learn a little bit more about the chartering process. And for those who are embarking on this journey, we look forward to working with you. Thank you so much for your time today.